Hello everyone! It is really great to see you all once again. Welcome to this online course that we have prepared for you, and it is called English Teaching for Understanding, in which we relate English teaching to teaching for understanding. Today we are going to actually relate CLIL and Teaching for Understanding because CLIL is a teaching approach that has been guiding our teaching for a number of years already within the Bethlemites educational community. Without further ado, let's get started! So if we remember a little bit what we learned about CLIL in our previous course, we are going to say definitely, oh, CLIL is not a methodology because it doesn't give us a specific procedure to follow in our classrooms. Well, instead it is a dual-focused approach. Do you remember? It connects content learning and language learning. And how to forget our beloved 4 C's: communication, content, cognition, and culture. Communication, everything related to language itself. Content, all of the topics about which students are developing understanding. Cognition, all of the mental work that we are fostering in our students. And culture, all of those cultural skills and cultural topics that students are going through as they learn a language as well. In that sense, teaching for understanding is also an educational approach. It is more of a vision. It is not specifically a methodology. And teaching for understanding is a framework. A framework because it is going to give us a number of concepts that we are going to be covering later on in our future sessions that are going to give us tools for us to be able to make teaching for understanding come alive not only in our classrooms but also in our syllabi. It is worth mentioning that teaching for understanding suits all subjects. It is not only limited to only one particular field, but it can be done in many subjects and many areas. And in that sense, it is very similar to CLIL, because we can do CLIL and we can do teaching for understanding in history, science, biology, English, and many other fields. Having reached this point, it is worth mentioning that we, as Bethlemites English teachers, we have now 3 main approaches that we really need to take into account when teaching a second language or when teaching a foreign language. One of them is the action-oriented approach, and it is already familiar to you. It is AOA. In this approach, we consider students as social agents, we make them really active, and we connect real life to learning inside the classroom. Teaching for understanding is also very similar to the action-oriented approach in that sense. Another guiding approach is learner-centered learning, in which we make students the doers, the actual leaders of their learning, and we become more of facilitators and guides who give the conditions and who allow the conditions for them to be able to learn as successfully as possible. And now we have teaching for understanding, which we are going to go through in this course in more detail. It is necessary to say that we cannot stick to only one approach or to only one method. The idea is to combine them as wisely as possible, depending on the context and also depending on the objectives and the needs of our students. Now let's see what similarities there can be between CLIL and teaching for understanding. The first one is that both of them truly support the active use of knowledge. Knowing is definitely not enough. Students need to actually do something with it. The second one is that CLIL and teaching for understanding encourage teachers like you and me to create enough and successful thinking opportunities. And the question here is, are we creating such opportunities in our English lessons? Let's remember that it's not only about creating communicative opportunities, but also thinking and cognitive moments for our students to develop understanding. The third similarity is that in these 2 approaches, we can see a shared vision of understanding. Understanding is definitely not storing information without a purpose. Instead, understanding implies that students go beyond knowledge. How can they do that? By creating, realizing, and coming to new revelations all by themselves. Another point that they have in common is that they relate thinking to a number of thinking abilities, such as coming up with solutions to a problem, innovating by creating new products, interacting with the world by understanding it, and also relating to it. This is why static knowledge makes no sense. This is why knowledge comes alive when students put it into real practice and in meaningful action. Therefore, we can state that both CLIL and Teaching for Understanding are clearly against systematic memorization, and instead, they support the fostering of metacognition and autonomy as virtues to set our students' minds free. Now it's time for us to see how Teaching for Understanding and CLIL can be talking about the same ideas but using different words. In Teaching for Understanding, they propose 3 different stages that we can follow to plan our activities. The first one of them is exploring, in which students get to embrace the world with their own hands all by themselves. This is very similar to what we call as engagement in CLIL and actually in English teaching. At the end of the day, the purpose is the same, and that is to hook students' minds up, and also their hearts. The goal is to seduce them with whatever they may be learning. The second one is guided research, in which they keep on exploring knowledge, they practice it, and they get correction, assistance, and monitoring by the teacher. We do that in CLIL and English teaching too. We just don't call it guided research, right? The last one is final synthesis project, a performance in which students use what they already know and what they have learned in order to do something with that. There needs to be a clear purpose and explicit action from the students. There is no teaching for understanding if students are not active. In our beloved project within the Latin American Bethlemites schools, we carry out similar projects, right? We carry out units of action. Just like Teaching for Understanding's final synthesis projects, students are given the chance to demonstrate and represent what they understood through different ways by following a specific purpose in specific conditions. A big conclusion here is that the differences between CLIL and Teaching for Understanding are just a matter of words. They have different names for the same techniques. They have a shared vision of education. Now that we mentioned units of action, it is really worth highlighting the good amount of data that units of action provide us with. When we give students a mission, restrictions, specific conditions, and a process of tasks to carry out, we are demanding a lot from them, and depending on how they do, we can see if they are understanding. Units of action are chances for students to prove that they are learning, and the way for them to communicate that is by doing and performing. This is why it is highly vital that we give them the opportunity to express their thoughts, their feelings, and sure, understanding in many different ways, different products, and different outcomes. Alright, now that we have reached this point, we really need to make sure that we go through the following point. Both Teaching for Understanding and CLIL encourage teachers and pedagogical teams to connect learning inside the classroom to what's really going on outside of it. There is no sense in asking students to go to school if they are going to do and see things that they won't need outside school. Every single idea, every single skill, every single topic, even if it's mandatory, needs to have a sense and a purpose in real life. The more awareness we raise on it, the more students will benefit. This way, we can make sure that students start to walk a path, the one through which they will find their potential, and what is even better, release it. The more aware we are of this, the more relevant learning becomes. Now it's your turn to do the following thinking routine. Thinking routines are a beautiful way to do some mental workout, and it's proposed by Teaching for Understanding. This thinking routine is called CEC. It stands for Connect, Expand, and Challenge or Challenges. We give you a hand by asking you some questions. Connect. What do you relate this to? Don't forget to tell us why. Expand. Tell us a little more about what you just said. Challenge or Challenges. Tell us the challenges that Teaching for Understanding may have for us from your point of view. We hope that this session was very helpful and very useful for you to start exploring Teaching for Understanding. Don't miss the official introduction because that's going to be our next session. Don't miss it. See you there.